Hello everybody, I'm RikOclon. Thanks for listening to episode 11 of Indie Game Dev Report, a podcast for our indie friends and friends of indies. And to any new listeners, thank you so much for checking this out. I can't tell you how proud I am of this community of shared audiences that we've got going on here. And I can't wait to see what the future holds. So I'm going to skip any general news on this episode, which may be a surprise if you happen to peep the episode length. So this kind of goes without saying, I'm really excited for this one, but it's a bit of a whopper. And I may have gotten a little carried away while recording, but I'm not entirely prepared to apologize yet. When I was editing it, I realized that most of the length was actually really great stuff. It's really hard to chop things down and still retain all the same meaning without losing too much content. So I cut out any conversation gaps and decided to keep most of it. Well, actually I changed my mind like 3 times and ended up rendering it into 2 different segments, and then I discarded those the next day and said, what's the point? Anyways, short story long, I should probably have set a timer or something, so in the future I might do that. Even though the whole 2 hours of this is jam-packed full of great information, especially if you're interested in getting your game onto the Nintendo Switch or other major consoles, because the guest that I'm interviewing for this episode is a garage dev or a basement dev, new terminology by the way. And they're doing just that with their very own self-produced IP. This is their first game by themselves. So without further ado, let's hear from my new friends at Only by Midnight on their extremely ingenuitive 3D twin stick shooter called Curve Space, which you can go play right now. So here it is, folks. Break it up into segments if you need to, but don't sleep on this one, because somewhere in the interview our guest makes a generous offer that I know I will be taking advantage of. So listen for that and enjoy. Okay, everybody. I've got an awesome interview today. I've got Only by Midnight, and they're going to talk to us about Curve Space, which is an awesome twin stick shooter that takes place in 3D space. And we've got Andrew and Jen, if you'd like to introduce yourselves a bit.
Sure. Hi. Thank you for having us on. I'm Andrew, the lead developer for Curve Space here. And
I'm Jen. I am the narrative, story, communications, everything in support that is not developed, including QA.
And together we make Only by Midnight.
Awesome. Okay. And can we go into your backgrounds a little bit?
Sure. So I've got about 15 years-ish experience in doing game design of one form or another. I'm actually a co-founder of Serious Labs, which I think is Edmonton's third largest sort of game development studio. After BioWare and Improbable, they kind of take the cake. And at Serious, we make video games for business. Basically, think like a flight simulator, but for teaching you to operate heavy equipment like a crane. And that's been a lot of fun. But about a year ago, Jen and I were talking, and like, what if we applied some of these skills and just made something for us, made something for the fun of it? And full disclosure on that, Jen and I, Jen's my wife, and we started poking at a little project, and that started to get traction. And July last year, we decided this is real enough, let's do it, and incorporated Only by Midnight.
And since then, we've gone to, got to go to Reboot Develop Red. My background is, I've worked several years for Canada's longest running English science fiction and fantasy magazine, On Spec. It's actually based out of Edmonton. So I was a publisher's assistant, and it was like that expression where you're herding cats. So I have editors, authors, artists. So that's my background. I'm also a writer and an editor. And yeah, we just kind of put together our strengths and started Only by Midnight.
Wow. You know, I love that you mentioned herding cats, because actually I just produced a podcast with some folks from Edmonton making a game as well, and they said the same thing about herding cats.
It's a good expression. I'd love if that's kind of a local one. I was about to say, you didn't interview the Crazy Cat Lady guys, in which case that would have been fun as well. We were hanging out with them at Reboot.
Wow. So it sounds like Edmonton's really a great spot for indie games, is what I'm picking up.
It has a lovely little development community. There's a lot of talent here through BioWare, through the university colleges. There's kind of a really nice little vibrant scene. It'd be nice if we had a little bit more participation from some of those big ones. But as it is, there's kind of a good little network, and we've got a lot of friends in this space. We've actually we just got a little support grant from the Edmonton Screen Industries Office, which is a nonprofit focused on kind of stimulating the screen industries in the Edmonton area. So that's been really nice to see. So there's a real push to kind of make Edmonton a hub for this sort of work.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean that's really awesome. And I'm just pulling up your Steam store here, but yeah, like so it's so cool that there's such a tight knit community. Like I was talking to it was Good Agreement Games that I had on before. You probably don't know them, but they're a small indie group. They're working on a Beersby game, Super Beersby. Anyways, they were saying that they got the opportunity to play their demo and their trailer at a theater, or the demo at a theater. I'm sorry, the trailer at a theater and the demo at a bar. And it just sounds like there's a lot of really cool opportunities. Obviously, this was pre-COVID, but it sounds like that's a great spot for that type of stuff.
I believe that was at the Garneau Theater, which if you're ever in Edmonton, it's kind of like a funky little theater. I know they brought in, I think, the original cut of Godzilla at one point, but they've got it's really they host events too. So I think they hosted the game showcase, Alberta. I'm just trying to remember exactly which one.
Yeah, there was something, and then it all got tangled with travel and then COVID and all that. We were supposed to be doing something, but and then at a pub, one of our favorite events here back when we could all get together in physical spaces is the Edmonton Game Camp or Games Pub. And basically once a month, the usual suspects would all get together, and usually there'd be a talk or some demos or something like that. And basically just a bunch of game devs hanging out, having a beer, talking games, and it's awesome.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a really great spot. So did you mention your education at all, or did you just go straight into your career?
I just jumped off onto that. My education, I have a Bachelor of Industrial Design from the University of Alberta, and that's usually a jumping off point for a lot of things like furniture design or product design. Some of the alumni there are like, I know one guy's working at Lego. And so there's a lot of kind of really cool creative potential in that. It's not really in fact, I wouldn't say it's a games program at all, but it's about the idea of design. And it sits nicely between computer science, in my case, where like the sciences and engineering and like the humanities, like art and whatnot. So really solid program. And I went into that expecting to work at BioWare. That was my goal and dream. And so expected to be working at BioWare. And about 2/3 of the way through my my degree, I was introduced to a fellow. It's like, Andrew, you're the computer guy, right? It's like, yeah. I was modding Unreal Tournament and doing some stuff like that. And
very cool.
One thing led to another, and I ended up being the co-founder of a company, and that gained some traction and brought in some people, and we closed some deals, and it became something relatively real. And while still going relatively strong, COVID has hurt everything, right? But 3 floors downtown, we had 70 people. It's crazy. Some customers there, like we've been working with like United Rentals, Bechtel, Dow Chemical, like real big names. And like all of that is awesome. But you know what? It's just not quite the same as like blasting energy spiders, right? And there's a lot more red tape involved when working with big customers, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you. But I could see how that would help you a ton in the independent world.
Yeah, I'm kind of diving off into this indie side with 15 years experience. I've worked for some really solid mentors on the technical side, on the business side. I claim a lot of what I've learned on the programming is attributable to the little Steve Hladky on my shoulder. Steve's the fellow I worked with on Crane and really kind of showed me how to level up on the programming side. And so I'm approaching this now with I'd like to make this project. I know how to make the project. I have these skills. I've got the business connections. I understand all these things. Now let's try. And I've seen a lot of indies who it's kind of like, I just graduated, and now I'm going to go and make a game. I'm going to do the programming, the art, the sound, the music, and the business and the marketing, and that's insane because this is already overwhelming for two people who've been doing this for over a decade.
I agree completely. It is completely insane, and I knew that going into it. That's just me. But anyways, yeah. So Jen, how about your education?
Well, I've got, we actually met at the University of Alberta. I have a Bachelor of Commerce, major marketing, minor management information systems. And when I got my major, it was interesting time. It was that shift to, we covered some stuff about the internet, but things have, when I graduated, things have kept changing and I keep learning, which has been awesome. But yeah, Andrew and I met at a computing science class out of all places because I wanted to get some for my minor. And yeah, took off from there.
Wow.
Yeah, I think probably statistically one of the least likely places to meet someone.
And neither of us in computing science, but
yeah, that goes way back. That's fun.
That's so cool. And obviously, it works perfectly again for the indie situation, and it just seems like a match made in heaven.
It's been lovely, and I've really enjoyed this last year and a bit working with Jen on this project. Like we've collaborated on a number of things. We have a short story published together. An
unpublished, unfinished novel that we've been working on and off. I'd like to jump into that again, but.
And in the early days of 3DI Series Labs, like we brought Jen out. I remember I tried to get her into basically a free vacation to Vegas, but she was there with notepad and paper and drumming up leads at this one convention and really into it. It's been awesome. So we collaborate well, and this last year has been a ton of fun, especially with the whole work from home thing. So it's been cool. We transformed our basement into now like a finished little living space. One wall is all development. We've got our computers and the dev kits and the screens and all those things. And behind us, we have the Lego zone for our 5-year-old, and it's been working pretty good.
All right. So before, and for the listeners, I've actually received a code to play some of the game a little bit further than the demo that I've already played. So I'm excited for that. But before we get into that, do you want to talk a little bit about the inspiration for the game, Curve Space?
Sure. So there's a bunch of pieces in Curve Space that I was always poking at as like on sort of a prototyping thing. I'm really fascinated about the idea of the mapping 2D mechanics to a 3D surface, and experimented with a few versions of that. So there's about 3 different prototypes of what became Curve Space. It was February 2019 that it's like, you know what? I've got a little bit more time, a little bit more capacity, and let's actually try round number 4. And that's the one that's stuck. And so basically everything you see is from this kind of new development. And this project would have been impossible in 2010. It would have been impossible in like 2014, but it was viable in 2019. And I was pretty excited because I got a bunch of the general mechanics down, the general technology. So it was actually working at the right sort of performance that I needed as solving a number of those big problems. And I was pretty happy. I was like, hey, I've got a game. It's kind of fun to shoot things in. And got Jen to play it. And she's like, yeah, not bad, but why? What are we shooting? Why are we shooting? And it's a big question. And so
out of all places, we were going down to a writing convention to Calgary. And we were brainstorming how we'd connect the pieces together for a story. And then I was just throwing out terms, and I said, how about trans-temporal space spiders? And then we kind of went from there with adding a choose your own adventure flavor element to the as you progress through the game.
And now as you play Curve Space, they might not be temporal because there's not much time travel involved, but you can totally see how, trans-temporal space spiders has fingerprints all over this, and the choose your own adventure, like it's a kind of a nice hook. What you're going to see, it goes beyond the demo. So the end game is still under construction, and some of the portrait artwork in that is kind of the half-finished version. But you'll start to see a bit of how that story actually starts to unravel.
Wow, yeah. That kind of reminds me of, what was it, like last year, I think, where there was that lawsuit, or was it early this year, a lawsuit about the term choose your own adventure. Did you guys hear about this?
No.
There was a...
There's more now.
But it's just... it's just using the term like it's copywritten. So like, I mean, obviously on the podcast you can say it's a choose your own adventure, but in your like promo stuff, I guess you have to come up with your own. Like, I don't know what one was like. Your own choose venture or something.
Oh
like
my! Well, I don't know if we do it
it's just one of
in
those
the copy
things.
text. That would be worth double checking. Appreciate the heads up. The general idea is, if you
Yeah.
think the original Star Fox, remember how there was a like a map of the planets and the stages?
Mm-hmm.
The game's similar
Oh, I loved
similar
it.
size and scope to that, but instead of choosing planet A, planet B, we basically choose character A, character B, and allow the characters to kind of drive us through this kind of map and story.
Wow. Yeah. No, and you kind of just went real quickly over the key feature, which is mapping the 2D space onto 3D objects. And it doesn't really, if you're just listening, it doesn't really explain it well. So I hope you check out the video if you're just listening to the podcast. But basically, imagine like a donut, like a toroidal shape, and then you've got a 2D game going on all of the surfaces, right? That's basically what we're talking about, except then you take that shape and you just get creative with it. And it's such an interesting idea. When I first saw it on Twitter, I just immediately was like, wow, that is so cool. And I'm sure that's what you were going for. But where did this idea come from?
Really good question. I'm not sure. There's a bunch of sort of games that inspired this. If you kind of put them all together, I think the mapping something to the 3D surface was experiment. 3DI, we used to make a lighting software called Pure Light, and I made a bunch of sort of abstract shapes as sort of lighting studies. And there was some question on like, what if we made a game that could sample lighting and do some cool things based on like the light as force fields, and because it's a light maps, it's on surfaces. It kind of got thinking into the sampling points on surfaces. But like, if I was to point the DNA for curve space, it's very much blend between like a shoot 'em up like Steriden or Geometry Wars to a degree, mixed with kind of some of the classic gaming that I grew up with. Like, I spent way too much time with Unreal Tournament, and so it feels a little bit like a mix between Geometry Wars and Unreal Tournament mapped to like a Mobius strip. So it's kind of like the gameplay of those two things, but with like a Mario Galaxies sort of vibe is what a lot of people would be familiar with. And I just love how some of that's worked, because you take the sheet, basically a sheet of paper, and you twist it, fold it, stretch it a little bit, and that 2D game becomes like your lasers bend and curl and do weird things, and it's 3D, but it's not. Like, you're shooting and it goes up the wall and onto the ceiling, and it looks really neat. It feels really neat, and so you just kind of chase that. It's something different. Like, there's a couple of 2D games on 3D surface, like Resogun on the Cylinder is a good example. After we'd already started Curve Space, we learned about Geometry Wars 3, where they're doing it on fairly simple shapes like spheres or the donuts or stuff like that. But this is like, yeah, how can we make this cool little magnetic spaceship fun and interesting on these environments that later started turning into space stations and asteroids and all sorts of cool things?
You went into the market research aspect of it, where you were, well, you know, in your own inspiration, you found that those people are doing the same thing that you're doing in ways in Geometry Wars, which is what I thought of right away when I first, you know, I mean, I guess Geometry Wars is just a well-known twin-stick shooter that everyone remembers because almost everyone played it. But you know, I love twin-stick shooters too. In fact, for a while, for about 2 years, I was making one until I canceled the project because it was just overscoped completely. But you know, that's part of learning, right?
Yeah, scope control is huge. And part of it is, I guess I'm a bit of a sucker for punishment on this, because it's to do just a 2D game is relatively straightforward with some of the tools, but it's like, well, how can we make what's a weird sort of spin? And that 2D to 3D side, there's some cool technology. We actually got a grant from the IRAP, the National Research Council's Industrial Research, and I can't remember, but it's a
program.
We're connected to them through Serious Labs, so I knew a little bit about it. I've worked with IRAP before, but like, they're all about extreme technical uncertainty. It's an R&D program, and I know that they're not really big into direct to consumer, and like games generally aren't heavy R&D in the same way that like pushing bleeding edge simulator stuff is. And the technology going on here, it's all, there's the mapping of the gameplay, but it's all based on vector fields, force fields. That's all calculated on the GPU that allows the whole game to work, and it's done in a way that is scarily efficient. This is the coolest computer science I've ever worked on in my career, and it actually allows us to like run on something like the Nintendo Switch, or even maybe some of the high-end mobile stuff. So we're going to be exploring, looking at high-end mobile chips and things later, sort of a version 2, and like it's a really complicated problem. So like looking back on it, it's like, yeah, doing this on a cylinder, doing this on just like a plane would have been so much easier. But heck, here we are. We've got a cool technology, and it gives the game a different feel. So there we go.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, I love the idea. Like I said, I think it's really great. It's like one of those things. Like I'm an art background person. I don't have any formal computer science training, but it's like an idea that I could come up with, but I would never be able to code. So I would don't even think about those ideas, kind of thing. But it's a good one. I really like it.
Thank you. And yeah, the tech behind it, like some of the initial ideas of just send a raycast down and lock to that surface, it works good, but it's extraordinarily inefficient. And so you see options out there where you have 2, 3, 10 entities, but in the initial test, I had these little particles that kind of swirled around. It's like, I really like that. I really want to make this work with these things, and learned all sorts of crazy high efficiency ways to get it working. And maybe June last year, I was all excited. We had this. I went through a big optimization pass. I was able to drive like 3,500 particles bound to the surface, or entities. It was awesome. I was really happy. I had my swirling particles. I had all the enemies. I had all the bullets. I had everything that I needed for this game. It was all, and like ran pretty damn good, like about 100 frames per second on PC with 3,500 particles. So it gives me a little bit of room for lower spec machines. It's all good. Then we got the Nintendo Switch, and that was spicy. It basically initially ran like a slideshow, and so I had to actually go back and learn how can we push this even further, and that's where we learned Unity's job system and burst compiler. And so to put it in perspective, now we can run about 120,000 particles on PC at 300 frames a second in the editor. And that lets us get about 10,000 of these particles on something like the Nintendo Switch, on something like mobile and that. And like it's crazy to see the technology be pushed that far. But now that we have it, it's like, yeah, let's have all the bullets, let's have all the spiders, let's have leg placements that snap to the surface, let's have all these things. And it allows us to really kind of lean into that right feel for the game.
Right on. Now I've actually turned the game on. I'm just starting it up now. I've got the audio kind of turned down so we can hear each other in the stream, or that everyone could hear. But yeah, just you can continue talking. It seemed like a good point to just start playing.
Certainly.
But yeah.
So I can see you on Twitch. We're probably a little bit of delay there, but so this is our Mobius strip level.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. It's a Mobius strip, and I'd like to credit a good friend of mine, Jerry, just awesome artist. And so most of the art on this, like I came up with the ship, the siphons, the spiders, and that. But Jerry helped us really nail down the way to decorate and like make that Mobius strip look cool. And yeah, it's a simple 2D thing, and then it just kind of clicks that like you can keep going in any direction and eventually get where you need to go, which is kind of funky.
Yeah, I really like the level design, especially the Mobius strip type stuff. Very Escher-esque. I very much like it.
Thank you. Yeah, I love those moments where like it kind of feels a bit like a magic trick, where it's a little bit surprising or interesting in that. Level design was probably one of the biggest design challenges. Like the weapons and some of the general mechanics, it's like there's a lot of refinement trying to figure out how to make those work. but the level design was one of the hardest, because it's like if you just have a sphere and you're mapped to it, well, everything is uphill, and it's kind of boring because stuff is just cresting this hill and you don't really see anything. But if it's concave, you're on the inside of a sphere, everything is uphill and you're basically just looking at a wall the whole time. So all the levels really need to be a bit of a balance between kind of like sort of a sine wave. You have to go sort of uphill then downhill, and it allows you to sort of get these sort of flowing vistas. It has to be curvy enough that the lasers and weapons are interesting, but at the same time not too twisted, because otherwise it becomes kind of complicated and unplayable. And then you want to have it themed and fit sort of the space station piece. So there's a lot of weird questions in how to go about the level design for it.
Sure. Now it seems like the game is pretty much all in place here as far as the mechanics and stuff go. Is there anything that you're still thinking about adding to the game, or is it pretty much in place and you just need more levels type thing?
It's getting pretty close to ship. We're hoping to enter the kind of cert process for the 1.0 this August. So we're in many ways basically done. Still fleshing out some of the secondary pieces like the arena challenges and the just making sure some of the endless content feels right and plays well. The end game is a little bit incomplete at the moment, so we're just wrapping up the last level that's going in and some of the last boss pieces that click into that. So there's a bit of refinement, but I'd say the first 80% of the story is basically there, notwithstanding some bug fixes or adjustments. What are you playing, keyboard or mouse or controller?
This PS3 controller. It's like, it looks like an Xbox controller, but it's a PS3 controller.
Oh, gotcha.
It's cheap corded.
So if you were to, so right now you have weapons on like the right trigger, kind of the standard cliche. If you also push, it'd be the innermost of the like the triangle, star, circle buttons. I'm not sure which one. It'll fire the other weapon.
It's a square.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can see how you can fire weapon A, weapon B, kind of in a weird sort of tag team sort of way.
Okay, yeah.
And
then you switch the weapons.
Well, there's a switch. So the way the game had worked basically since day one was you just had generally two weapons. You can get extra slots for 3, 4. Let's say you switch weapons forward back. But this last month and a bit, we've been doing a semi-public beta test. And if you just drop into our Discord, that's where we've been having the discussions. And one of the coolest features to come out of that beta test is people kept saying, you know what, I really want to be able to fire both weapons at the same time. And I'd never really considered that.
Right.
And we did some tests, and well, now in the game you have your main fire, but then you kind of have the secondary fire, and allows you to get some really cool combinations of two weapons working together. Personally love sort of like a spray and pray thing like the sandblaster, and then like push this other button for bang, sniper shot right to the face. And like it changes the game in a really exciting way. So that's the sort of like high value, relatively low effort final adjustments that we're currently working on.
So I noticed that the bosses are really cool, and obviously they take some time and effort to do. But it seems like there's probably quite a few bosses in this game. Like maybe 5 or 6 or probably more, right?
Yeah, so the bosses all have hilarious human code names because that just makes it better. So the first one you're going to be getting to here in a couple of minutes is Fred. And we've got Steve. Also, apologies to any humans with proper names. We beat it to full honors. But we've got Fred, Steve, Dave. We have Karen, and then we've got a couple that need names. We've got the ice cream cone. So yeah, Fred, Steve, Dave, Karen, ice cream cone. We've got the roller, so that would be 6. We've got the kind of special story boss 7, and then there's the kind of big ending boss 1, so 8. So it's looking like we'll probably be shipping with 8, 9. There's kind of another variation on the blob one. So it looks like 9 bosses for kind of the first version of the game.
Right on. That's great. I mean, that's a perfect number, I'd say, considering how much effort you're putting into them. Because I played 2 of them on the demo, which is free on Steam if anyone wants to pick it up. It's a little bit different than what I'm playing here. but not all that much different by any stretch, really. It's just it cuts you off at one point and different levels, it looks like.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a lot of fun.
Thank you. Yeah, the demo is basically the kind of initial tutorials, get the key mechanics out, and basically the first act. So it's like, okay, here's what the story is, here's what it's about to go, and come join the beta, come play the game for real. The goal is sort of one run through sort of the loop. Oh, there's Fred. Hi, Fred. One run is about 2 to 3 hours, give or take. It does have a sort of a save state concept, so you can kind of continue and keep going endlessly. But yeah, want to have something in kind of that nice sit down, pick it up, play. Not unlike Steriden is a great favorite of mine. The little shoot 'em up. I played it on Steam, but it's doing pretty good on Nintendo, and that's a big inspiration for these sort of ones.
I haven't played that one.
Oh, highly recommend. Ooh. It's a glorious little game.
What was the title?
Steriden? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, it's Steredenn.
Yeah, great little pixel art shoot 'em up.
Okay. Oh yeah, I'll definitely have to take a look at least. I love 3D stuff too. I actually am a 3D major, but pixel art is kind of my jam as well. And retro style games as well as mostly just shooters. So like this definitely fits. But yeah,
I love me some good pics.
It's a very you like some pixel art
yeah.
too?
I love good pixel art. It's one of these things that's so outside my comfort zone, to do though, which is one of the reasons I like playing games like that. So often I find if I sit down and play a game, it starts to blend into the I want to make the game. Muscles start kind of triggering, neurons start firing, and that it gets kind of tricky to enjoy it as a medium. Where the pixel art games, it's like, yeah, you know what, this is different enough that I'm just sitting back and enjoying the ride, and really, really enjoy that.
Yeah.
So games, like Steriden, or not really pixel art, but like Hollow Knight is a big favorite. That's the sort of stuff I'd be playing, and but I work with 3D all day long, and so that's where my comfort is in terms of the tools and the math and how to actually like workflows and some of those. And so now you can start to see where it's like, there's a little bit of someone who likes playing 2D games, but knows how to make 3D games as kind of the basis for this.
Yeah, no, and I think that's one of the things that drew me in personally, because I love both of those things. And, I think there needs to be more twin stick shooters. And also I think that the evolution is there's room for evolution in the genre.
Hugely. One of the coolest things I think about the industry right now is there's so many tools and options out there to make things. It's amazing. But one of the downsides is you get things like, here's the twin stick shooter template pack, and it's kind of janky, and basically everyone's kind of like, I'm going to slap a different skin on it, but it all sort of feels the same. And I like challenging and pushing and trying to find unique ways to come up with some of this stuff. So there's a reason that the control scheme is fun. There's a reason this sort of game works. And then it's like, how can we do something different that's not just like, oh yeah, twin stick shooter number 512 on Steam.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And that kind of goes with a lot of different genres. I feel like a lot of devs are struggling to come up with creative ideas that are not like too creative almost, because once you get too creative, then people aren't ready for the idea yet sometimes. So it's difficult.
That's actually
that's a fair point.
Yeah.
It's kind of like just from my background in writing and editing and seeing what the novels and what's out there is, it has to be that balance between being the same, being similar, and being different. And it's usually it's more similar, but it's just those different points that can attract someone. Like they already have that jumping off point. Try something. Try that element that's new.
They need to find something that they can feel comfortable about before they can start something new. And this is perfect, because that twin stick aspect is just super comfortable. It feels, in a lot of ways, it feels just like some of those titles that you mentioned, like Geometry Wars and stuff like that. But in other respects, it's completely different.
and that's very much what we're like consciously attempting. But it's very weird because I see like platformers, and there's so many different platformers. There's a lot of tools and samples out how to make a platformer, and like there's just it feels overwhelming number of platformers. And yet I think the favorite game that I've played in this last year is Celeste, and it just stands out. And that shows you how you can really elevate the genre with clever design and clever art, clever writing. But yeah, we really want to try and make something that it feels familiar but stands out a little bit. Just a quick aside, one of my favorite development stories for Curve Space, we were at Reboot Red. So Reboot developed Red, little boutique GDC in Banff. Think GDC, but relatively small, all up this really cool little hotel. Well, this cool campus hotel out in the mountains. And so we had our booth set up, and people were coming by and playing. And this fellow, and I wish I got his card and name. Everyone at the conference was fairly senior, so you had a lot of team leads, CEOs, executives for all these. You have this fellow, Japanese businessman in games, and he has this bright white kind of suit jacket, looked very much like CEO, like looked very official, and all these things. And I think he was walking with a colleague too, and like it's like, oh, this looks kind of interesting. And do you want to play? And I kind of push, come on, give it a shot, right? And he kind of looks at me, okay, and he picks it up, clicks the controls, kind of it's like nods, and proceeded to just dominate the game over the next 15 minutes in a way that I've never seen. Like just that was probably one of the best runs I've seen. And then afterwards, he looks, hands me the controller, nods. That was fun. Thank you, and just walks away. And it was amazing. And it shows you there's if you have that language of playing these sort of games, it is in the same language, but it's different. It's something that hasn't been put together that way, we hope.
Wow. So, not to change the subject, what you're talking about is super interesting, but in the game, I'm at a screen where it's showing some of the art now. Now, did you find someone to do the art? Is the art something that you were able to do in-house? How does the artwork, as far as the 2D stuff work, go?
We had a comic book artist. So through my days with OnSpec, we had Kyle Charles. He's a local comic book artist based out of Edmonton, and he'd done some. We ran a couple kind of comic book inserts into our issue that people could read. And then I knew Kyle, so I asked him about doing some. We hired him to do some artwork for Curve Space, and he had like the right comic book feel, and he provided the artwork. And for the coloring, you can blame me for that, but for most of it. But yeah, it's we just actually he came up with the artwork. We really didn't have a story at the time, and then we took a look at it, and we thought, well, she should be the main character, and that's how we kind of like put everything together too. So kind of went to kind of a back and forth iterative thing.
Yeah. So the original idea with the 2D art was we needed that intro, that kind of initial hook, some key art that we could do as marketing, and so we had that gathered energy, attracted spiders. Now we harvest spiders, and that was the art we commissioned, and we were pretty happy with that, and it turned out good. And Kyle knocked it out of the park. Like he has a great sense of adding the character and making it dynamic, and kind of we wanted to avoid like space fighter soldier number 5,000. So he's like, okay, cool. We've got somewhere between like space farmer, oil rig worker, and like starfighter. I can see this, and that went and included a Tron wrench, and so that was really awesome. And then people want stories; they want to see what we're going through.
Why are you shooting space spiders on an asteroid? You have to be able to answer that. So that's transtemporal space spiders. That's all. It all got started. So there wasn't in the beginning a story like starting out. But it evolved, and it's just something that suits the nature of the game.
And so then we went back to Kyle, and we got a whole series of portraits and kind of other variations on the art. And just due to timing, he did the pencils and line art, and then Jen did the coloring. And so we're just finishing getting some of the later portraits into the game. But this is where we have, and I think there's about 100 portrait variations that we all get in for the various cards, because as you just saw, half the game is basically going to be navigating a virtual Skype call, and we need to have the right faces for that. But we're really happy with how the character turns out, because she's familiar yet a little bit different from the kind of genres. We wanted to avoid that like Space Marine thing.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. People are definitely looking for story these days. It's difficult because, as writers, I'm sure it's time consuming to come up with a good story. But yeah, it's definitely something people are looking for. So I'm glad you put that extra effort into it.
And
overdrive, very cool.
Maximum overdrive now. There we go. Story is huge. I think it not necessarily like has to be a big narrative arc writing, but like that framework, that backbone for like what's going on and why and who.
And usually most people consume different types of stories. Like I mentioned, choose your own adventure. Some people read like a 5-10 series, not novel series like Brandon Sanderson, or you're reading like a comic book that's like a one shot, and just having that connection and that narrative hook that kind of pulls you in, and it has to suit what it is as well. I mean, this is not like a BioWare game where you're playing with all the options, but that would be outside of our scope. But just a reason why you're there, a reason why you're shooting space spiders, and yeah.
No, I agree.
Yeah, context. It's all about giving context to some of these things, and even if you don't necessarily explain why in like a big exposition, but if you understand why these different pieces all click together, that can be really useful.
Wow, look at this gun. What am I doing here? I know you've got the delay. Oh, I'm on fire, but I'm boosting. Okay. That was crazy. It was like blue flames just flying everywhere.
Yeah,
the guns are so cool.
The overdrive states are fun. They're a good example of kind of my game design approach, because it's I want to get the most bang for my buck. So we have, I think, like 24 weapons. I want more. I want, like, if I could do something different with each weapon and make it feel like there's 48, that's even better. But like, how can you do that? So the overdrive state is very much how do we take each weapon and then give it a visual, a sound, and slightly gameplay twist to kind of make it stand out. And whole piece, like design philosophy for this game, is really to try and lock down the variation. So yeah, you're shooting spiders, and even though the spiders are different, at the end of the day, that kind of starts to become samey. So how do we, through the weapons, through the upgrades, through the pickups, kind of shift things around every couple of minutes so that it feels different? Even like some of the waves we're shooting spiders, some of the waves we're harvesting spiders, some of the waves we're not shooting at all and trying to be precise about these little peer spiders. Like, all of these things are about kind of just shifting up the mechanics to keep it as fresh as possible, as long as possible.
Wow. Yeah. No, it's really great idea to make the guns as dynamic as possible. But they're also very different, which is also what people look for with guns. So I think you did a great job with the arsenal.
Thank you.
Now, we did talk about the 2D art, but we didn't really talk too much about the 3D art. Is that something that you're doing out of house as well, or are you doing that in-house?
Yeah, so everything you see here is me with a couple of like repurposed asset pack things. So like, I don't mind using like, to me it's be as efficient as you can when you are trying to set out and build something. So like the PBR surface of this asteroid, it's based on some stock footage pieces, or not footage, but stock assets. The carved out asteroid, so you can see where there's this big plug that's been sliced away. That's literally a granite countertop asset for the texture. But I think it's really important to try and do stuff in a like to make sure it fits into the right context, make sure it belongs. So like some of the greebles on the spaceship, or you saw those the siphon, like the dimensional coils. Oh, there's one open right there at the top of the plug. these are based on purchased assets. The planet above is a purchased asset. So there's a couple of things like that. But one of the big pieces where I have, so I know a little bit of the 3D art. Like I made all the spiders and manipulated all these pieces. I made the asteroid and the antennas on it and all that sort of stuff. But
they look great.
Thank you.
So obviously, you know quite a bit. You're being modest.
Thank you.
And I can tell.
I don't have as much experience as guys like Jerry, who really, really know the space. But where I'd like to think I can kind of help elevate models is the shader side. I have a big background in shaders, and shaders to me, like, if you think about, I'm all about making an experience, and that's that blending art and math, whether that's making physics, making these bullets work, making these legs work for the spiders, or making that surface look and feel right. And so all the shaders in this are custom. So you have like a custom shader that does this, catches the light just the right way for the asteroid, and also does it in an efficient enough way to run on mobile. But you also have shaders for the sky. And so some of the times when you see the sky sort of tear, that's kind of a cool signature visual. But even just if you take a moment and notice the stars, you'll notice how the stars have, like, they're bright and pinpricky and have that bright sort of star feel. And if you go and buy any sort of star space sky sphere, they turn into mud. And it's just a matter of resolution. Yeah. And that drives me wild. So I've got a whole series of design blogs planned. We've been a little bit behind schedule, so we haven't really made as many. But we do have one out on how we pulled off the stars. And some great little tricks in there. And a friend of ours basically like, okay, I can apply some of that, and made his space shooter's skybox so much better just by bumping up those little pinpricky stars. Oh, there you can see it's starting to tear.
Yeah, no, they look great. Yeah, there was the shader was adjusted there, and all of a sudden the stars started glowing orange when you were speaking. It was great.
Yeah.
So, where did you get your start working with shaders? I mean, shaders, if for anyone who doesn't know, shaders are difficult. They're really not easy if you're writing them. Are you using some type of modular scripting thing?
Yeah, so we started with Unreal 3 back in the day. This is for Cirrus Labs, and found I could do some amazing things with their really awesome shader editor. And that was great. Then we moved to Unity, and Unity's been pretty good. I could talk at length about the Unreal versus Unity difference, but suffice to say, Unity is really awesome and flexible, and that flexibility is really nice when you're trying to do like crazy stuff like curve space here. But Unity's lack of shader editor stuff is brutal, and I find I need that what you see is what you get. Like, I want to be able to sculpt it a little bit artistically as I work on it. So it was really painful for a couple of years. And then Shader Forge. Shader Forge is awesome. And so I've been using Shader Forge for the last couple of years, and then it's basically deprecated now. So going forward, we'll be using Shader Graph, but Curve Space is still on the legacy renderer and Shader Forge.
Wow, that's interesting. I actually do own Shader Forge myself, and I never actually use it to make anything that I actually presented to people, but I did do some really cool stuff with it. I really liked it. I did learn later that there was a lot of bloating that occurred in the code, but it's easier than writing it yourself, right?
Yeah, and like, it depends on what you're doing and performance. Like, the shaders are not the bottleneck even on mobile for this scene. Yeah, it does pretty good. There's been some issues as Unity changes their lighting systems, and then stuff breaks, or I've got a whole pile of Band-Aids on Band-Aids trying to keep Shader Forge limping along onto 2019 and support Nintendo Switch.
That's what I was going to ask. This is on 2019 that you're building? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is 2019 that you're building on?
Yeah, this is 2019
with Shader
LTS,
Forge?
yeah. And Shader Forge basically...
Wow, see, I didn't even...
it stopped being kind of supported around the 2017 side.
Right, that's what I was saying. So I was like, oh, well, that sucks. I paid like, what was it, $90 or something for it, and now it's not even supported anymore. But the fact that you're getting it to work is great.
The creator of that, who's really awesome, open sourced it, and so
Uh-huh.
there's a little bit of support in from some people. So I managed to find some. Here's how to get it working on Nintendo Switch. Yeah, but it's on its last legs, and shader graph is pretty cool. But when you have a mountain of custom shaders, to switch over to shader graph would have been months worth of work. So it was one of these not worth it for Curve Space. But we're excited for the next project, which will kind of start fresh. And like I like Shader Forge or Shader Graph or any of these sort of tools for the what you see is what you get tools. Like as I'm trying to manipulate the weird cores or even like the eyeball like rifts that you see going around, or like that crazy energy beam in the center of the portal. Like that's a classic. How can we make a cool looking thing with the shader? But the bigger heavy stuff, so like under the hood to everything here is a vector field stack happening on the GPU as shaders. And because the entire game is 2D, you can basically do it as a not quite a surface shader, but basically a surface shader on just manipulating textures. And it's great for debugging because you can just display them as colors. So I have all the inputs, outputs packed as colors, and it's actually about 20% faster than doing it as a compute shader. But so some really crazy stuff for how all the physics work, how the spiders navigate, all of that's happening kind of in as a shader. But that's would be way too heavy for any sort of the node-based ones, and so that's all just done in pure HLSL.
Wow, so you do write HL or H? I can't even say it. You do write shader
Yes.
code.
Oh yeah, and it's like the different sort of like Shader Forge is great for the straightforward stuff or stuff where you can sort of see it, and then then you start getting into the weird custom things. So like the way the spiders actually move, and I can direct you to a visual link afterwards for podcast purposes. But like pathfinding, I wanted to have the spiders navigate. That seems like a straightforward thing. And like I tried A star and a bunch of these general systems. Like at the end of the day, they just have to pathfind in 2D. It's a fairly solved problem. And it felt awful. It felt gross. It didn't work. And I was really disappointed with that. And so actually, you can see how those little arrows are flowing on the surface.
Sure.
Yeah, as they're directing you to the next spawner, although I guess I'm a couple seconds out of date. So they're a beautiful example of just all these little things following. They're like leaves trapped in the wind being kind of this navigational vector field. And so I've always liked the idea of vector fields. I've liked the very physical idea of stuff flowing, things sort of falling around a whirlpool or leaves in the wind. And so what I've done is basically set up a system that allows me to kind of like build these vector fields and iteratively grow it. And it's a little hard to describe without pictures, but imagine like a 2D lighting simulation where it's all dark, but your character is like a light source and it just kind of flows away from you. And I managed to create a cool system where like seated from the player, it's flowing outwards as this gradient, and then it flows outwards from that gradient and flows outwards again. And the end result is I have this nice gradient that leads back to anywhere where I want to go. Well, the spiders just follow that gradient. And so same idea. When you want to go to one of those power nodes, I just fire off another couple of these stacks, and I now have this nice gradient from anywhere on the map to get to where that power node is. And so we just apply forces based on that gradient. Spiders, they flow around corners. They kind of have this nice sense of momentum. It feels very organic and alive, and they still end up navigating to where they need to go. And that it's been a huge part of the feel for the way the game works is this vector field system under the hood.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know anything about vector fields, to be honest. I'm understanding just from what you're saying, but I could easily tell, first of all, that you did a great job with the pathfinding, and I could also easily tell that you were not using Unity's built-in pathfinding at all.
Oh.
or at least from what I could
Yeah,
see.
no, none.
And obviously A star would not really work too well on this because it's not what A star is really suited for. But yeah, I could see wanting to try because yeah, it is like a 2D problem, but it's not. Also, it's very much a 3D problem. Yeah, that's really cool. And I feel like you kind of explained vector fields pretty well. And this weapon's a little hard to use.
Oh,
Sorry.
no worry. Also for the Scorpion,
So
try charging it up.
okay, yeah,
That's the one thing I want to kind of help communicate a bit better. Some of the weapons are really good if you like charge it up, line it up, and you get this good hit. And
hmm
I had this one player who didn't get that any of these weapons have this charge state. So like even the charge laser, you just like click, 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 click. And it's like, yeah, it's a little weak. And it's just like, damn it, that's the big super laser, but you need to just hold it down and boom. But
no, I understand. That's kind of the way it works with having arsenal changes and stuff. They've got to be different, but you start running out of ideas, and then you come up with a good idea, and then you expect people to try to learn it, and it's different from just shooting a machine gun. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast.
one of the funnest design things to come out of this is I'd like to think we're getting the weapons fairly dialed in and balanced. There's a few adjustments as we go towards the finish line, but they're all roughly the same. Some of the more powerful ones have ammo at general difficulties to kind of balance things out, but they're all roughly about the same effectiveness. What I think is fascinating, though, is actually just a question: what's your favorite weapon so far?
Mm, that's a difficult question. I think I like the flamethrower.
Nice. So, what I think is really fascinating on this is almost each weapon is someone's favorite, and everyone has like they can't stand. It's like their least favorite weapon. And so there's a bunch of these where
Yeah,
it's like, okay, these are my like top 3, top 4, and then these are the ones I just can't stand. And then you have the stuff in the middle. And so part of the game is about the joy of, hey, I got the one that I like. Part of the game is about the, okay, I've got to make use of this one that's not my favorite, but I need to survive. How can I beat the boss with it? And that can be quite satisfying. And the other piece is just like from a designer, it's like if everyone hated this one weapon, well, it's a bad weapon, most likely. Like if no one else gets it. But if you have kind of this interesting mix, I really like that. I was surprised by that. And so, like, I had this one person who's like, "Oh yeah, you just need to cut 2/3 of your weapons," and because I just don't like them. And it's like, well, yeah, I don't know. The ones you want to cut are. I've got other people here saying that they are their favorite by far, and I think the game is better for that variation. So, yeah, to me, telling that it's kind of all over the map versus it's just it's kind of like these are the 3 good weapons, these are the 3 medium weapons, and these are the 3 terrible weapons. The fact that it's kind of personal preference is fascinating to me.
wow. And has that been one of the bigger design challenges facing the arsenal and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think in aggregate it'd certainly be it kind of grew organically. So a bunch of weapons were added bit by bit over time, and basically like there weren't many that were like cut as weapons. It was more a this isn't working, so how do we adjust it? And now it's doing this, and that's better, but it's still missing something. So yeah, getting the arsenal down was really a huge part of the design. I think in terms of time, it's right up there with like getting the AI and those sorted. But it's not like it was. It's months worth of work, 10 minutes at a time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say was the biggest design challenge that you faced, if it wasn't so much the guns?
Yeah, that's a good one.
When you came up with Lash, someone said that there was something. Because one of the things that we did when Curve Space started rolling, so we get it rolling, was we had people come play the game in its early stages, and we would get feedback. And I know Andrew had taken the game over to someone's place, and they played it, and they said, the weapons are good, but something is missing. And that kind of led to, what direction to go. And Andrew would have more details on the story. I was babysitting our 5-year-old.
Yeah. That's a good jumping off point, actually. The general stuff that is fun to shoot and stuff that is fun to shoot them with came relatively easily, but that's also most inspired by other projects, right? So it's like I've played lots of games that are fun to shoot things and stuff is fun to see hit. So that relatively straightforward. The level design was challenging in a way, like there's about 5 discarded levels for each that made it to the game, but that was more about understanding the rules and like what works about this game. I think the biggest is, yeah, that was some early feedback we got. I think that would have been May 2019. Is and I think the way it was phrased is it's a very competent game, but it's missing something, and I don't know what. And the I think some of the answers to that are story and context for sure, as well as on the weapon side is kind of like all the stuff that's not just sort of the general shooting. So like the overdrive, the dash, but especially like the lashing. And so the lashing was fun. The lashing is originally started as a weapon, just it's a grapple hook weapon. But we really liked what it was doing because you can use it for like crowd control. You can use it to kind of pin down some enemies, gets you a bit of a like a Z targeting sort of strafe thing as you're pinned to this enemy. It also gives us a means of interaction that's not just shoot. So like in the story, it's great for it allows us to like harvesting spiders is a very different feel from just shooting them. Harvesting, and then we spin that into a couple different flavors for like story fluff. But yeah, and then like the kind of the linking and creating these chains, and also like you have a spider lashed, and then you toss that lashing beam, and you basically throw the spider, or you're entangling them, or you're wrestling them. Like you get all these verbs of things you can do with spiders that are more than just shooting them, and so kind of trying to figure out what that sort of secondary loop of interaction, I think, is really core to the gameplay, and really sort of tries to fill some of those that hole that like if this was just blaster and shotgun and all those other things turned off, it'd be fun, it'd be different because of the environments, but it would be missing something, I think.
So, and I didn't realize you had a Discord until you mentioned it, but I will definitely join it and see who else in there and stuff. But was that very helpful in the testing and the development, or is that something that's kind of late game?
So the answer is yes to both.
Okay.
It's
Very
you
cool.
don't think about these things, especially starting your Twitter as early as possible. You don't think about those things until they come up. But it's been great. It's been and you get different types of people with different types of background and reasons why they play. And it's actually just for me, just seeing what everyone has to say. It's been wonderful because everyone they come to a game for different reasons. They come for mastery. They come for the experience, and it's just great with what they have to say. And we're really grateful for people's feedback. It's
yeah. The best piece of advice I'd have to indie devs out there is consider marketing and consider it early. And I know that's a cliche, but we thought that, yeah, we're going to allocate all this time on marketing. We're going to raise some real money, pulling in like real business strings to get some real money to do marketing. And then it's like, no, we needed to be on Twitter. We need to be pushing more. We needed that Discord up. We needed to be on Instagram and Facebook and all these things. So like we're still playing catch up. And so next project, that's all going to be, well, that's starting now. So it's like that's the marketing side needs to predate the game in some respects. So start that as soon as you can. So one of the mistakes I had was kind of thinking Discord was part of the marketing, and in many ways it was. Like through work, we've used Slack, so fairly familiar with Slack. But like Discord was just it's a thing that exists, and I hadn't really used it personally. And so we started rolling that up as part of the kind of marketing / beta program, and so relatively late. And I wish I had it up early, but wow, it's been awesome, and we've managed to find a few key people, and like it's cool to have fans of the game. I've never had something with a fan before. That's awesome, and
love it too, right? It's great.
That's a new wild experience just in itself. But like, we are so fortunate to have some awesome people in that beta, and just kind of that core group. So like Dansaga, Jet, Gizmodo, Drayden. Like I don't know everyone's human name, which is kind of funky, but like Vantosis, like these guys have been just awesome. And what I think is cool is how different some of what they're looking for. So on one side, you have Dan Sanga there, who is Dan. He is all about the high skill play. So like, once he got in here, he basically is like, okay, I'm going to try like the endless survival mode. And then he comes back. So it's like, yep. So I broke the game. Turns out after so many billion points and or so many upgrades, like the game just stops working. And it's just like, okay, I need to consider 64-bit scorecard here because 4 billion points is not enough. And it's been really fun trying to hone in the higher skill play. So I'm not sure if you've been using dashing much. And there's a couple things at kind of the general level.
I forget about dashing.
But like later as you get into it, like it becomes a means of avoiding reflecting damage that's difficult but necessary. And so we've really tried to dial that in, and that's been really gratifying to see that click. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have Sam Gizmodo, who just enjoys the way the game feels, is not trying for that super crazy high score, is not like Dan's like, cool, Nightmare, how can I make Nightmare more challenging, right? Then you have Gizmodo, it's like, I just like playing this, getting into the zone and blasting some spiders. And so it's been really nice having kind of that sort of representative sample and people who give feedback. So yeah, we'd love to see you on the Discord. Anyone listening to this, feel free to join the Discord. The link is at the top of curvespacegame.com. And we just love feedback and discussion, and it helps makes the game better. Love it.
Also on Steam with wish listing right now, and the demo's on there too. So definitely everyone check this out, wish list it, so that way that helps their algorithm scores when they actually release. Check out the demos, give them some feedback on the Discord. I mean, obviously you're mostly just tweaking stuff, it seems like. You're not really adding anything. But, there's definitely room for feedback always.
Yeah.
And you said you're working on a new project? Did I hear that right?
Somewhat. And yeah, so there's room for still fine adjustments and things. So that's still plastic, like as of today. So feedback welcome. And we really appreciate the wish lists. If this is something that it's like, hey, this feels like something our friend would enjoy, please send it their way. Like right now, we've put a lot of heart into making the game. The hardest part is just making people aware that it exists to play. So
it's getting the word out.
Yeah, that's huge. And for the next project, it's a little under wraps at the moment, but we'd love to come back in 6 months and talk about it. But suffice to say, this last spring, we started to have that existential discussion, like, Curve Space is actually going to ship. What happens after Curve Space? Which is a weird discussion to have, and I think a rite of passage for any indie studio. So that was cool. And due to COVID, I was on a temporary layoff from the day job side, so I had a little bit more time. And a couple of friends were in a similar boat. So it's like, oh, wait a second, we've got all these people. What if we got together and put together a pitch for something cool, aiming specifically at the Canadian Media Fund? And so we put a really cool project together, pitched that to the CMF, and waiting to hear back. Fingers crossed. It's a really exciting project. Very different. Like it's not a 80s themed twin stick shooter. More a narrative heavy, surrealistic pencil drawn platformer. But I think it'll look really cool. It builds on some of the awesome technology we have here. And the biggest thing is this is like Curve Space's art as like Andrew can make. The Tragic Kingdom is what happens if we add some really talented 3D art and really talented 2D pencil illustration art. And so we're excited to see where that goes.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm excited too. And I imagine you'll probably use the same Discord, or are you thinking to make a different Discord for that project?
To be,
Or that's probably way ahead.
to be determined, but I find, and this might be just me being new to Discord. I find the many different Discords all fragmented can be a little bit, and I feel bad because I join half a dozen of these things, and then they're all pinging me, and I don't have time to address it, so I mute them, and then I just become this name in that Discord that's not really active, and we're seeing that in our own as well. So I'm not too much in favor of creating a dozen different Discords that we control. Rather, I'd like to carve out sort of spaces,
Right.
and we actually just did I found us talking game design with a couple of friends yesterday. It's like we should just set that up as a not its own Discord, just a channel on ours, and have that discussion. And what a great starting place, because that was good. Yeah, I met someone new, and we are talking about like level design for like how to make compelling level design out of space stations. It's just like, oh crap! If only I could introduce you to like Jerry, who just made the most amazing space stations I've ever seen for like another project, and or introduce you to like Ian, whose project contains those space stations, and like, wait a second, I have a Discord, I can create a channel. Everyone here, one room, talk, and that was awesome. So I'm not sure if Tragic Kingdom will evolve out of the current Discord, or the very least, if you're part of our Discord, you'll hear it. Follow us on Twitter, any of these things. Like we want to make sure it's pretty clear. All these.
We'll get the news.
Oh, pardon.
We'll get the news if we're following you. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly it.
Cool.
Yeah, if you follow us, so at Only by Midnight on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We'll keep you up to date. We try and post cool, interesting content, and actually for Twitter, so like this whole marketing self-promotion thing kind of makes my skin crawl a little bit. So the way we found to balance that out is just trying to showcase cool stuff. So you see on Twitter, half of it is like, yeah, here's the latest little thing from CurveSpace, or here's a cool podcast we're being part of. Hey, the other half is just like, that is some awesome pixel art animation, or wow, the lighting in that, or crazy concept art, or that is an awesome spaceship. And not just like liking things, but trying to like call out, comment on fun things. And so that's, yeah, you follow us, you'll see a bunch of just fun game design stuff, because I like that shit.
Yeah, no, I think people enjoy that. I think that's I do the same kind of thing, obviously. I've got a game, but I'm promoting your game. So that's the way it works.
I'd really appreciate that. Actually, so I'll be looking all that up after, because it was Jen who connected with you. So I don't know anything about your side, but what's the 10,000 foot view of your project?
Oh, my 10,000 foot view is a little blurry at the moment. But that's just the way it goes. I'm at a demo state. I've got about 12 levels, and then there's like 7 bonus levels. And it needs a lot of polish. But it's a vertical shooter with pinball, so I don't know. You can check it out later. There's not a whole lot to it. I mean, it's fun. People like it. But it's not as breathtaking as this game.
Well, thank you very much, and I look forward to checking that out. I am really excited. There's some cool projects out there. I was expecting Twitter to be like wading into a septic tank, as kind of my impression of like what Twitter would be like for someone who wasn't on Twitter. And you know what? The game dev community side especially has been really awesome. There's cool projects, people showing awesome work, and it's a nice place to comment on that. So I certainly enjoy that on the kind of Twitter social media side. And then like Discord has just been awesome for talking about projects. Like that's been the really cool piece, because like Twitter, you're dealing with these like micro moments, like one sentence at a time, and that's great, and it's nice as one sentence go, that's really cool. But yeah, Discord has been nice to have the real sort of deep discussion.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm at this part where after the end of the boss, you choose your upgrade, and you kind of just like walk up to each upgrade to see what that is, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The problem I'm seeing is that there's a lot of upgrades to choose from. you know.
Decisions.
It might be a bit much. I got a couple of ideas to dial that in. There's also a bug where the one that's kind of you're closest to should have that line, should repel the other ones, and it should be pretty unambiguous to which one you're picking up. But there's some bugs where that might not work perfectly. So we're trying to nail that down. Part of it is like I just wanted to see if I can get away from having like a UI. Like I like the idea that these are things in the world versus like just a list in a UI that you're selecting, right? But I agree it's a bit much. I did like the multicolored sort of the party boat of like ding 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 ding. You got a bunch of upgrades, but yeah, that's a valid issue.
It's not a bad thing where it's like, it's not breaking the game in any sense. It's just there's I could see as a designer how you'd be like, oh, we need options. Let's put some options in there. But at some point, it might be good to just take another look at that and see if you can slim down the options, or maybe find a way of randomizing it. Certain levels give you these, certain levels give you that, that type of thing. It's just one of those things. It'll cut down the clutter and then get people back into the gameplay, because let's face it, when you're shooting a whole lot of stuff, it's great that there's reasons for what you're shooting and stuff, and like you said, a story. But as far as making a whole bunch of decisions and stuff, I mean, some people really like that, and other people they just want to shoot stuff. So there's going to be a common ground,
legit,
right?
Entirely legit, and it does kind of slow things down at that point. One of the thoughts I had is keep a little bit of that party boat flavor with kind of some points, kind of like the energy when you beat a boss in Super Metroid, and then have just fewer upgrades. The upgrades are randomly associated outside of the ones given during the story, and so we do, especially for like the endless sort of ways, like they're not transformative in a way of like you get the one upgrade and you just win the game, but we want the upgrades to feel mechanically different, and kind of it's about replayability. We want the way you kind of choose the upgrades to kind of like flavor that run, give you a chance to kind of like bias things towards playstyle. But completely good feedback, and I agree there's definitely some issues there that I'd like to tighten up before we launch this.
And just while we're on the topic of feedback, I realize this isn't really that useful this late in the game, but I was thinking it would be really cool if there was like kind of almost like arrows on the ground, kind of like from F-Zero or something like that, where it gives you, because to clarify, my thinking is that some of these levels definitely have like a racetrack feel to them almost, especially the Mobius strip type levels. Things like move quickly at points. Like, I mean, the game's quick, but sometimes zooming around like crazy would be fun too. It's just an idea. Obviously, it's really late in the game to add something like that. But,
like the speed boost sort of zones.
Right. Like something a little bit more prolonged than the speed boost.
Yeah. Interesting. That's probably not doable for 1.0, but
right.
We are looking to do another version in the spring, and I've got some ideas that I'd like to see if we can pull that in. That's an interesting one to consider.
Is that like
part of that is just a? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna ask if the game was a sequel or it's updates that you're talking about in spring.
Update, and the big update that I want to do, although like anytime you're going to kind of crack it open and do that 1.1 sort of big revision, is like this thing will be in the field for a while. We'll get a sense for how people play it, what works, if there's anything that needs to generally be fixed or like we want more of. We'll have taken a step back from it, so it'll be a nice chance to kind of like crack it open and see if there's any big things. There's a couple things on more the cutting room floor that might make their way back in. But the big one that I want to do is both some regionalization. So this will launch with 8 languages and be fully localized.
Wow.
But we definitely want to push that a bit further. So even if we don't get quite as many languages at the initial launch, we definitely like to kind of open things up a little bit wider in that next version. And then the other piece is VR. So like day job wise, like I'm the lead designer and programmer behind a line of VR crane simulators. I know VR. I also know that if I put a VR camera on either this third person or like in the cockpit there, it would be the most nauseating experience you can imagine. So we'll have that as a mode because some people have asked for it, but not recommended. That would probably kill me. But I have a really cool prototype where basically imagine this space station with a disk as the size of, say, maybe like a coffee table, and the view basically the stars are all fixed, the world is fixed, but the coffee table is basically rotating to give you well, your sort of perspective on it, and like your ship is like the size of a quarter. It works really, really, really good for VR. So I'd love to do a VR version of this, and kind of optimize around that.
Wow. Interesting.
And,
I'm a fan of VR.
I can just see you on.
But yeah, it'd be,
And I can.
it'd be nauseating for sure. Sorry.
Oh yeah, the first person is brutal, and I could just see you get to the turrets. So the turrets are kind of a fun one. Yeah, try shooting.
Oh, okay. I see what's going on. I wasn't sure if they were. I thought they were just regular power module things.
No, they're the laser pointer of doom, but basically you take so and it was just one of these fun. What happens if through the whole game, basically stuff in front of you dies? What happens if we had the source of all these rockets are coming from these turrets? And this is a fun one because this isn't in the demo or the beta; it'll be in the game proper. But tried to stick this as like a major new mechanic right around that halfway point, right around it's like, okay, I'm getting familiar with how these things work. I'm starting to get that strategy, and now we're kind of giving some options to like really shift things up, and that's where the turret waves came in.
Yeah, I have a tendency to not really pay attention to games and just let myself die until I learn. That's just kind of how I work. I feel like honestly it helps as a tester though, because that's the way a lot of players work.
The best thing from my perspective is just watching people play, and it's been actually really neat. Some of the best playtest things we've had here are either having someone just over where I sit there and kind of over the shoulder with a notepad, or people on Twitch and just watching them play, and it's like, oh, there's the big red button. But it's been really useful. Basically, trying to see what works, what doesn't, what needs to be reinforced, and kind of try and dial in the fun. And I think we're getting pretty close to something that like I could work on this for 10 years if I really wanted, but that actually like holds up to that initial version. That's compelling enough that someone would actually want to play this on Steam. So
Yeah.
that's sort of the idea.
And we didn't mention Steam release. Have you got an idea of when you're planning your release?
So we want to do things simultaneous with the consoles. That's slightly more efficient from a PR point of view.
Sure.
So it depends on the consoles more than anything. We're hoping to enter cert. Well, our plan was to be in like solid third-party QA right now, but we're about a month and a bit behind schedule, just thanks to marketing. The disruptions that come down to COVID, the really good feedback we've been getting on the beta. So things have slipped a little bit, but we're still hoping to get things buttoned up into the third-party QA in a couple of weeks, get that started, and I really want to enter cert into August, which means that we're hopefully able to launch late September, early October. Our goal is to get out launched before the new consoles, but then also like be a indie launch title on like the Series X and PS5.
Wow.
So like it's
so are you
now like part of the development is like if you're launching for if you got an Xbox One license today, you'd also be making a Series X game. That's just kind of the nature of the beast, right?
okay?
So.
That makes sense. Now, are you working with a publisher?
No.
Okay.
No, we're.
So how are you publishing to consoles?
So we basically just approached and pitched. We started with Nintendo back in last summer, and that was kind of a cool experience. Basically, we approached Nintendo, going, "We have this game. We think it would be awesome on Switch. Would you like to take a look?" And they said, "We need more information," but they did that in a way that showed us what success looks like. So it's like, we need more information. Here's an example of what a ideal pitch looks like. And so that was really good. We did some dissection on that. We kind of grokked what they're looking for. We took some time. We built a trailer. We built our website, and we put together a pitch to Nintendo. We sent it off, and in I think 5 weeks after we sent it off, we got an email saying Nintendo has received this, and you will receive an answer in 4 to 5 weeks.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, cool. I'm glad we didn't do this late stage in the project. And one of my philosophies in any of these sort of like pitching, applying, is always to do things like we're moving ahead no matter what. So we've talked to a few publishers. We haven't found a deal that works. So we're going ahead. If we found a good publisher today and the offer was right, yeah, I would be happy to go with the publisher, but we're still moving towards our goal, and there's a kind of a confidence plan in that. But anyway, so yeah, we're making a game for Steam, but wouldn't it be awesome on Nintendo?
Yeah.
And it was actually during the Reboot Develop conference that I was a speaker at. Now, the Nintendo guy who was supposed to be there, but he ended up canceling. And somehow, I think something to do with that conference, like it was too conspicuous. So I don't know if he like checked the conference he was supposed to be at and saw that Andrew was a speaker, or I don't know if one of his colleagues was there, and it's like, right, this thing was in the slush pile. Weren't you going to like look at that? Or I don't know. The timing was very conspicuous, but right in the middle of one of the show after parties, we'd been on our feet for 12 hours. We were a little intoxicated, and I get this email. It's like, congratulations, you've been selected for development with Nintendo Switch. And it's just like, yeah, rock on. And I know from a number of my colleagues that like that's a fairly weird one for first time studio unpublished game, like to nail that. Like Nintendo is fairly gatekeepery about.
I didn't even think that was an option, to be honest.
It suffice to say that my day job boss came over and shook my hand because they'd tried something at his previous thing. It was good. So that was fun. And I was telling everyone that yeah, business head Andrew is just like over the moon because we got Nintendo. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Then you have programmer hat Andrew's kind of like screaming because hopefully it runs. And turned out to be a little bit prophetic because yeah, it ran. We got the dev kit, that was all awesome, and it didn't run. It was a disaster. And so basically went back to the drawing board for 3 months and re-architected everything around burst and jobs, and we actually got it playable on the Switch, and it's awesome. It feels very nice as a handheld game. Like it feels very natural and at home on the Switch. And so then once we knew that Switch was viable, we took some of the learnings from that, updated our pitch. We approached Xbox and PlayStation. Xbox has been amazing to work with. That was great. We got accepted into that, got the dev kits, got that working. And PlayStation, they said, yeah, you're accepted into it. Expect an email in the next couple of days for next steps. And that was about 3 months. And so I think they're quite delayed with COVID and various things.
Sure.
But we finally got the dev kit last week. We're waiting on a development key and hoping to have Hello World on PlayStation 4 here next week. But yeah, basically building off those guys. And
Wow.
Xbox was fun because we were on we were part of the Xbox indie development summer event this last week. The demo is currently up on Xbox Live for free, so the same demo on Steam. And yeah, if you're listening to this, you can check us out on Steam, or if you have an Xbox One, it's there. The one mild caveat is we have had some reports that there's been some technical difficulties on some range of Xbox and TVs, which has been really annoying to track down, but we have an easy fix. Just turn off HDR, and we should have a patch out in the next couple of days. So the patch is currently in there with Microsoft.
Wow.
But outside of that one hiccup, yeah, it's been awesome being on the consoles.
When you were talking to PlayStation and Xbox, you had already lined things up with Nintendo. Did you mention that to PlayStation and Xbox?
Yes.
Okay. So
yeah, and I'm pretty sure it did. Like, Nintendo was a bit of it's the hardest business-wise, and it's the hardest technically. And so if we can get it going, it becomes kind of like a beautiful push on the business side, and it also becomes like a beautiful sort of min-spec sort of target. And so it worked out both well in both cases. We leveraged that a little bit in the Nintendo on some of the other funding. So we got a bit of an investment deal, not through a publisher, but through the that's still sort of in the works, but we managed to, so I can't speak about that quite yet. We managed to get a little bit of funding towards marketing, and part of that is the product, part of that is the business model and the competitive analysis, but like, Nintendo is a big feather in our cap for sure.
Yeah, essentially what you've done, from my understanding, is you've convinced Nintendo that you're a profitable publisher without publishing anything.
Yeah, like that's at the very least this won't undermine the Nintendo brand. We know enough to actually like deliver. So some of what they were looking for in the between the lines of that application were does the game make sense on the platform? And that's a big part of what they're looking for. But the other one was, are you actually going to be able to pull it off?
Yeah.
Can you pull this off? And so like I leveraged the Serious Labs experience that History Jen and I have doing some of these things. So we really leaned into that. But I think yeah, okay, we can see this game on the Switch and looks like you have enough experience to actually pull this thing off. We'll give you the chance to actually make this happen on the dev kit and whatnot.
Wow. You mentioned you had a programmer. Now, is that how large is your team exactly?
Oh, the team is 2.5 people.
Okay.
So it's me doing development, Jen doing everything except development, and some art support from our friend Jerry. For example, he just finished our Steam icons, and they're glorious. So we'll actually have real achievements coming out here in the next update that just have these awesome little graphics. But basically, what you're seeing, and especially for this level, notwithstanding, there's a couple things derived from asset packs, but like everything on screen there is me.
You had someone to help you port to Switch?
Oh no, I did all that.
Oh, that was you as well. Okay, wow. Was that like, you said you're using Unity? Was that very difficult to do with Unity to port to Switch?
The up and running to Unity was easy. I had Hello World with a multicolor cube in like within a couple of hours, so that was easy.
Your game.
But Curve Space did not run at all, and it was on the processor side. Yeah, that was heartbreaking. And I tried a few things, and it's just like this is not viable. And so then I started like slashing. I went in there with a machete and like turning off this feature, and it still wasn't working. And so I basically said, like, I've got nothing to lose, so like let's take a month, and worst case, I could always just say, sorry, Nintendo, it's not meant to be, and go back to the version that we had. But I did a little bit of research, and actually just that week that I got started, Unity released support for their Burst compiler with compatibility for the Switch hardware. And Burst and Jobs has been great, because what I had originally wasn't multi-threaded, and Jobs is a good way to kind of do multi-threading within Unity's own. You're not like normally multi-threading in Unity. You can't access any of the Unity API. So like raycast, no, you don't get raycasts. So it's like not really an easy multi-threading case, but it's like, okay, well, if I need to make this thing more performant, multi-threading. Okay, jobs seem to be the way Unity wants you to multi-thread. And what's really cool is the way jobs work is you have to articulate your problem as very simple inputs with very simple outputs, ton of computation in between, and you have to feed that all in as a struct. And if you can do that, you can run it on multiple cores. So there's your multi-threading. But you can also click this magic little button that runs it through their burst compiler. And the burst compiler is insane to me. So my first test on that is I did a bunch of weird math, just a bunch of exponents or something like that. Did it 100,000 times, so it was using like 100 milliseconds. So 100 milliseconds of just like raw CPU computation. Then I clicked the button for burst. And so actually, first I put it on a job. Then it went down to like 20 milliseconds. So it's like, okay, it's running on 5 different cores. Makes sense. Then I clicked the button for burst, and the same output in 0.7 milliseconds.
Wow.
I have never seen anything that transformative in terms of speed. Like that's not even an order of magnitude faster. That's more than 2 orders of magnitude faster. And now the problem is, it's like you're writing a novel and they'll be like, cool, we'll give you $10,000 for every chapter that you write that doesn't use the letter E. And like, well, my main character is Emily, so this is a little bit challenging.
It's Molly now.
But if you can articulate the problem in a way that's compatible with burst, the performance savings are insane. So I rewrote my projectiles to use burst. I rewrote the lasers and the spider leg placements to use burst. And the very last one I did is I rewrote like the energy particles kind of swarm things to use burst. And all of that worked really well. And so thanks to all of these things, I managed to get the game smooth enough that I could actually get it to run nice and smooth on Nintendo Switch. And that's been great, because that also means we're able to run it nice and smooth on Xbox. And you no longer probably need an i7 to run it nice and smooth on PC. Like this should actually run on an i3, potentially worse. So that's been great.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I've been using Unity for since like 2013, so I've been using it for quite some time, but I would not know where to start doing what you just described. Like, even though you just described it to me, I wouldn't know where to start. So that's pretty awesome that you found the burst compiler tool to help you there. And so just to clarify, the issues were performance based, and by using the burst compiler, you were able to ease the performance, right, to make it run smoother.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like I tried simplifying the game design, and it just didn't. It wasn't happy. So it's like, all right, I have, say, 10 spiders, and the game needs to be able to run 10 spiders. Well, on the art side, I can make the shaders less complicated. I can reduce the lighting. I can simplify the number of triangles per spider. So that's a known problem on how to simplify the art load. Mm-hmm. And running 10 spiders, like theoretically, I could have them as really shitty looking cubes, but there'd still be 10 of them. Games have had more than 10 things on platforms like Switch for a while. So theoretically, the art side wasn't too bad, but the CPU side was a disaster. And it's because like there's a lot of weird math going on to like this. Like when I fire a laser beam, I need to basically do a raycast, sample where it's in on the 3D surface, modify the angle, do another step with another raycast, and repeat. So on PC, it's not a problem to do 10 raycasts for that laser beam. But that's a lot of computation on a mobile chipset, and the Switch is a Tegra 1, so it's Android, right? And so it's basically like, all right, how do I take my mildly complicated PC game and now make it run on mobile? Is basically the question I had to deal with.
Wow, yeah, that's really a great way to put it. I think our listeners are super interested in this too, because I think it's everyone's dream right now to have an indie game on Switch, and it's just, it's a little bit difficult. So, and I think, and it's because of these hurdles that we're talking about that make it a little bit difficult, and also, what we mentioned about publishers and stuff.
But yeah, I think the fact that you've surpassed these hurdles is like super inspiring.
Thank you, and hopefully we can get through lot check and actually they do cert. Although the demo did pass cert on Xbox, so we've done the first round of that and some fun
Wow.
stories. I think an interesting one to yourself as well as your listeners is I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. So if you hit me up on Discord, I'd be very happy to talk about everything I can, excluding NDA stuff. So I can't get into the nitty gritty of Switch development, but I can certainly talk about best practices on how you can optimize a game that would work for mobile and therefore Switch, especially in Unity, because Unity's my background.
That's a huge resource, and I'm sure the audience really appreciates that. I do. I'm definitely going to be there.
Awesome. Yeah, there's some cool things, and like Burst and Jobs are part of the Unity ECS dot system, which is awesome. But like, it would not make sense to rethink the architecture of this program in dots. Like, it's cool, but it's so alien. It's just like you'd be starting from scratch. But there are fragments of this, like Jobs, where it's like, well, what if the doing curving laser beams? Could I do curving laser beams on a job? Or could I do procedural mesh generation on a job? And it's like, yes. And you can do it 50 to 100 times faster
When you
on a
say
different thread.
when you say job, what exactly do you mean?
Unity job system.
Okay.
And so that's the and Unity job system is the one that if you're compatible for job system, you're implicitly compatible for Burst. And so it's in order to use Burst, you have to be using a job, but job is nice because it puts it on a different thread, and then Burst makes it like 50 to 100 times faster. So it's yeah. So there are probably some problems. Like I've seen things like mesh generation, a lot of voxel stuff, or some special VFX. Like are the lashing beams? Do you see how the beams arc and bend? All I'm feeding into a job is a start, mid, and end point, just 3 vector 3s, and it actually creates the spline, creates the spiky geometry based on that spline, and then populates a mesh renderer.
Wow.
And it just does that on a different thread, and it does that stupidly fast. Those purple arrows guiding you where to go, those are not particles. That's a mesh that's being generated on a job, because that job is just churning away, generating things, and just updating a mesh. And it's more efficient than doing it as particles. So there's certain problems that this tech can really, really solve. So like if you have here's my game, but it's just like, wow, this one part is a bottleneck that's preventing me from thinking mobile. That's where the job system might be a huge help. So there's some cool ways to optimize things and get it working for mobile. And then the other side is just the business bit. I'm more than happy to talk about our experience putting together a pitch. How do you like apply for funding, apply to a platform? We're actually doing a seminar here in a couple of weeks for the Edmonton Screen Industries office on just like how do you apply to funding agencies and basically tell them what they want to hear in a genuine way. That's not being disingenuous, but it's like, how do you like recognize that like, Nintendo seems to be very interested in this game fits the brand and it's completable. How do you make sure your pitch communicates this game fits your brand and we know how to pull this thing off and have the right tools and technology to do so? So it's all about kind of those sort of pieces, and I'm very happy to talk about that and also provide like a critique. I'd love to see certain pitches and like show you how to optimize that. That's no guarantee that Nintendo would go for it. I have no power over them at all, but I can certainly tell you what worked for us and kind of take a look at any sort of applications you have and see if there's any ways to improve that.
It's a definite step in the right direction, and well, it can even help you get a deal with a publisher if Nintendo doesn't sign on. So I definitely think that people should take your advice. It looks like I found a bug. Oh, it fixed it.
Oh, that's definitely a bug. Oh no! Oh no!
Back in.
that's the system that catches with the other system. So there are seams in the world. Because if you think about unwrapping a 2-dimensional space on 3D, there's going to be seams. And so the 2D game for this is basically, think Portal, where each of these seams, you enter one seam and come out the other. So it's a non-Euclidean Portal game. And there can be some scary edge case bugs, particularly around those seams, where things can break. And so in that case, you manage to slip through a seam and get off the world.
Yeah.
And it was nice to, and that's definitely a like what the fuck moment for the player.
Yeah.
But there's
you could, so.
Yeah, so then a secondary system kind of fired up, going, "Wait a sec, this definitely shouldn't be teleport."
I like it. It worked great. It's better than killing the player, which is what I do in my game.
Or the not doing anything, which I unfortunately had for a while, and then now the game's basically soft locked because you can't take damage. You'd basically have to options menu exit, and that's just not satisfying. So
yeah, that was happening a lot when I had a web build up on my game. Just because web build, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, that one terrifies me. There's too much data involved. Like unzipped curve space is somewhere around 1.2 to 1.7 gigs, depending on some of the content we ship with it. So that's too heavy for WebGL. Yeah. But
also, action games just don't work well. I realized the colliders and stuff like that. There's just too much packet loss, and you're bound to go through a collider.
Oh, I believe it. Some of that's terrifying. Although I did see a friend of mine do his prototype using WebGL, and what a great way to be able to send people a link and get feedback.
Yeah, so I definitely did the same thing until it broke.
Fair. I like Unity's multi-platform support. Like Unity has been pretty fun for a lot of what it can do. Although I think the big difference, like Unreal, when we used Unreal, this was back in the day when there's another one there. Interesting. You're finding all the bugs.
I tend to play like a tester more than I do just a regular player.
That one's kind of interesting and very much on a
good to know. Good to know
on a seam. But like Unreal, so we had just switched from Unreal to Unity. This is 2005. I don't know. Anyways, we needed to use morph targets, and in Unreal, you just use morph targets their standard way, right? It just worked. And now we had to change how Unreal did morph targets, and that took like one of our senior programmers a couple of weeks doing surgery in this massive code base that we'd also paid $500,000 for. Like this is doing any change to that in Unreal is nightmarish. So basically, you just use Unreal the way it was intended to be used. But guess what? If you had 1,000 assets with morph targets, they're naturally all going to be the same. And you could tool around that. You could make assumptions around that in the programming side, right? So we'd switched over to Unity and needed morph targets. And guess what? Unity didn't have morph target support. And it's just like, what the fuck? Unity, this is standard. How can you not have this? And then it's like, oh, well, here's like 12 different options on the asset store that do morph targets. Here's 3 open source options for free. And here's a tutorial on how to roll your own.
Right.
And in an afternoon, I rolled my own version for morph targets.
Yeah.
That would have been impossible in Unreal.
Right. I feel like that's why they left it out in Unity. Because I was thinking 100%. Same thing. Yeah. But it's easy enough.
They've added it. Yeah, they've added it since, right? But at that point, and so that was clearly.
I haven't even noticed that they added it.
Yeah, I'm not sure when. Probably somewhere around 5. But anyways, so we rolled our own. It was custom fit to what we needed. Perfect. Could not have done that in Unreal.
Yeah, interesting point.
The flip side of this is in Unity, it's if you can solve a problem 10 different ways. So like Unreal, you have one way to solve it. You do 1,000 assets, it's all that one way. It's consistent. It's rock solid. Unity, if you could solve that problem 10 different ways, how many indie studios have you seen where they literally solve that problem 10 different ways? And it's great for rapid prototyping. But then now you do it 100 things and they're all done different ways and they're conflicting and you have bugs and it just turns into soup. And so I've seen so many projects basically turn into unscalable, like just disasters because of just allowing Unity's flexibility to turn into this tangled web of competing systems.
Yeah,
And
I did
so
that for sure. I had a project where I just kind of loaded it up like a feature horse is what I called it, you know. But honestly, you know, I didn't produce it by any means, but I learned so much from doing that, not only in how to properly scope, but how to, you know, just do all those different mechanics and functions that I was just adding and adding relentlessly, that when I went back and did something much smaller, I realized that I had an idea of what I wanted to do, and I could kind of pinpoint it and replicate it without changing too much. But yeah, no, I totally see where you're coming from.
Nice, and that's a really good way to approach it. So when asked like the Unreal versus Unity, like my short answer for what we learned from SLI is to basically take Unity's flexibility, architect a direction, set that path, and then be consistent about using that path. So to use Unity's flexibility, but then take that path and treat it like Unreal. And that's how I've managed as an individual to pull off the architecture for Curve Space. It would not be possible if it turned to soup. But this would be very, very hard to pull off in Unreal because it's not the way Unreal would expect it to work.
Right.
So that's where I love Unity. And yeah, if you want to experiment with different features, different directions, those sort of things, Unity is beautiful for that. Unreal, like, it can look amazing. Although the one thing I would say is, like, outside of getting into some of the Quixel, Megascan, PBR, like if you're using like the ultra high-end art process, like, yeah, I think Unreal wins. But one thing that I've seen is a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm just going to use Unreal because it looks better.
Yeah.
Well, if all you're doing is like day one Blender tutorials, guess what? It's going to look about the same in both. Maybe Unreal's default post-processing looks better, but like it's kind of about the art. And if you're starting to push things in weird ways, you're trying to do things differently, you're going to have an easier time getting some of that in Unity. So I don't know, the idea that it's like, oh, well, if I want to have good art, it has to be Unreal. It's actually more about the art than it is about the platform.
It's just one of those. I don't know who to place the blame on here. Probably still the Unity logo, right? But I feel like, yeah, it's just a terrible argument that the art is better on Unreal. I mean, sure, it could be. That doesn't mean it's always going to be. And yeah, the post-processing stack is pretty solid right off the bat on Unreal. But Unity's got great post-processing also. You just need to learn how to use it first. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you should know how to use it. But, you know.
And I do think at like the upper echelons, like, yeah, Unreal is a little bit more capable. So like if I had all of a sudden BioWare's environment art team, I've got a couple friends over there, and it's like, all right, we're going to go do a bunch of photogrammetry and make like the best of the best AAA grade art. Yeah, it's going to be slightly easier to publish that in Unreal, but you can also publish the same content in Unity, and it's going to look amazing too. So like splitting that hair. But a lot of people are like, well, therefore I want good art, so I need it to be in Unreal. It's like, well, you're not doing that AAA grade art. You're not doing that photogrammetry. You're not having this team of experts like leveraging the best, latest tools. You're making a bunch of like pixel art animations. Unity can do some of that a lot easier and doing some cool things with it. So I think the advice I'd have to indies is unless you're really making use of some of that art one and they're trying to decide an engine, I would generally say Unity. But like if you've been working with Unreal for like 4 years, just keep going with what you know. They're both entirely fine.
No, I think that's great advice. And for me, yeah, I'm pretty much stuck in Unity at this point because I've been working with it long enough where I don't have any desire to learn C++ or visual scripting. So I'm just going to stick with Unity until either something better comes along that I can work with, or until there's some terrible reason why I would stop using Unity. But that's just me. Everyone's different.
I completely agree. And you know what? Starting out, the visual scripting side might not be a bad place to learn if you're intimidated by code. Although I guess there's now Bolt and whatnot for Unity. Pros and cons. I love the fact that there's that competition. So I actually really like that there is Unity, Godot, and Unreal as real options. And I know like Game Maker and some of these other ones work pretty well in that space. Like,
oh yeah,
it's a beautiful time to be a indie developer. It's a scary time to try and market an indie game because there's a lot of cool stuff out there, and Steam is a little overwhelmed. So the marketing side has gotten spicier, but it's amazing to be able to make these things, and amazing that like some of the heavy lifting, like I didn't have to get into the bare metal programming to like connect to Nintendo's chip or something like that. I've got friends who are in the dark days of consoles, and like, you know what? It's nice to just make it work once. And okay, fine, I'm invoking things like burst and jobs, but that makes it work good on PlayStation and Xbox and Nintendo. I don't have to like spend 10 years learning Nintendo development and that's all I get, right? So
sure.
It's pretty cool these days.
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal. It's a great time to be making games. Definitely very cool.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff out there. That's the hard part about Twitter is it's like, oh, that's an awesome project, or oh, what a great idea there, and those are neat.
Yeah.
I'd also say it could probably be like, I'm just fairly bullheaded in this, and we just started making things, but I could see it being intimidating. And so, like, the best advice I'd have for anyone poking at this, who's looking at all these awesome projects, going, "Oh, I'll never get it out there, or I'll never make this thing." The two things I would recommend would be, one, just keep working at it, even if the project you're on is not like, even if you cancel that or it doesn't work out, you're learning things, and these are valuable skills. And so the best thing you can do is just keep pushing bits a little bit at a time. And then the other thing I'd highly recommend is find a group or a team. The solo side can be rewarding. I'm doing that myself, but especially if you're just starting out and learning, it's so much easier if you can find a team to either help inspire each other or to provide some mentorship. That's strongly recommended. So, kind of my general advice for new guys starting out.
I mean, I would say use some caution when you're joining a team, and definitely keep track of how much your sorry, a little distracted. How much you've put in, because if someone else isn't putting the same effort in, that's usually a bad sign. But it's not always a bad sign. There's a lot of things to look at in teams. I guess my nervousness for listeners comes from just bad team experiences, and I've had numerous bad team experiences. So that's why I'm solo.
Yes, and it is a thing. I have seen that. What I'd always recommend is try and understand what on the business side, good paper, even stepping back. So on the business side, where I've seen stuff go wrong and people start thinking about bringing lawyers into it is when it goes sour or when it goes really, really right. And so make sure if you join a team that you understand how am I being rewarded for this? And if you're doing this as a hobbyist on a hobbyist team, and no one's getting paid for it, still try and consider what happens if all of a sudden we hit something and it makes money, and how is that being fair? And what happens when one person does all the work? So consider those sort of things. Be careful about investing too much of yourself in some of these projects. Like, there's a level of trust. So I have no problem working on a team with some of my friends that we've got years worth of experience. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily put all myself out there on a new team that I've not worked with before. I'd be a little bit careful.
Trust is huge.
So some of that, and so yeah, a lot of a good team thing comes down to trust. A fun story from university. So university was all about team projects and design, teaching us how to work on teams, which is great. And we had this one project. We had to design a stand for a arm exercise bike for the rehab clinic. That was cool. Problem is, we had to design and like manufacture, weld, like literally build this thing and then do some research on it. And I was on a team of, I think it was 6 people, and I was the only one not going to the Toronto Furniture Show. So all 5 of my teammates, many of them good friends, well, they were planning to go to this show, and that was a big show career-wise for them. So basically, they were busy working on their furniture piece, on their portfolio, and then like actually attending the show for a week during this project, right? So yeah, about halfway into this, it's like we had an initial plan, and then everyone started falling behind, and then they up and like literally disappeared to Toronto and left me with a 6-person group project. And what I think was absolutely brilliant is I took the design, the CAD, to the north side of town to a fab shop, and basically like, cool, how much will it cost to make this thing? All right, we're doing this. And so we had this just professionally built, and then took the bill and I split it 5 different ways. And it's kind of like, look, if you want a grade on this, you're pill pointing up, you're chugging it. It'd be like $300 each. And that was my passive aggressive, like, screw you guys. But at least like that was if I'd leverage from the, we all want to graduate together, right? When it's just hobbyist teams, it can be really frustrating. So yeah, beware of teams.
Yeah, you never know when life is just gonna do stuff. Life happens, you know. For me, one of my best team stories was that I was working on a horror project. This was only a few years ago, and I was just concept artist. I was trying to become a character artist, but they had someone else that they wanted. So I was like backup character guy, mostly just doing concept art. And then I ended up doing graphic design, logo for them, and stuff like that. And they were just kind of asking me for everything, and just like random things, not everything, just random things. And before I knew it, the team was just falling apart, and there was no contracts for me, and like they weren't gonna pay me, and I kind of realized it, and like I just started like backing away, but I didn't want to like leave the project completely because I wanted to see how bad it got. And it got bad. Oh man, it got really bad. It got to the point where eventually they were still using my logo, like well after they had kicked everyone off the project, found a publisher, canceled the project to us, but then started it back up without telling us. And so we had to actually go to the publisher and have them remove our assets from the game. It was a pain in the neck.
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. At the end of the day, anytime you have people working together, like that's where communication and leadership and all these factors all are there. And then it's at least relatively easy if you had money. If I had $1 million, I have no problem building a solid team. That's a very straightforward problem. Now, that's also me talking with the confidence of having done this for 15 years and seeing the ins and outs of it. But like, at least if you're going to pay someone, there's a base level of competency and expectation and drive that happen. When you get these hobbyist teams together where people aren't getting paid, then this is, why are you getting someone's attention? Well, because they believe in the project, in the people, in the leadership. Like now it's a pure leadership exercise. That is hard. And so I've seen some of these projects out there, and it's like, it's humbling. You watch this and it's like, that's what good leadership and organization look like.
Yep.
But yeah, if you even have like okay leadership, it's going to turn into politics and fracture and get weird because you don't have that incentive of a paycheck to keep people in line. So, what do you think? You're dueling a parallel universe clone of yourself here. I can see on screen.
Yeah.
So this is as close as we have to multiplayer. What are your thoughts?
I love it. Honestly, it took me a while to realize what was going on, but yeah, no, this is a really cool direction. I think. Is multiplayer something you have planned for the project or no?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I've seen enough on multiplayer to realize how expensive that is,
Yeah.
and a lot of what I'm doing with the physics is not conducive to multiplayer replication. So it's if I had enough money, that might be on Curse Space 2, The Revengeing, but
Yes.
version 1 is going to ship with single player.
Cool. Yeah.
That said, the duel is kind of a fun exploration to what would that feel like.
I like it, and it does feel nice. I do think that would make a great feature for a sequel, for sure.
Multiplayer is weird. We had to add that to a physics-based simulator once, and $250,000 later, I know exactly how difficult good multiplayer is. And I've been watching a friend with his project Nova Forge, a shipbuilding. So you build the ship Starfighter game, and multiplayer. Like nothing is easy in multiplayer.
Yeah.
And anyone who's just like, oh, just replicate the position and velocity, and you're good. It's like, no.
Yeah, no, something like this seems like it would be extremely difficult. I mean, action games in general are difficult online, from what I know. But this is like you said, non-Euclidean in spaces, and yeah, it would be very difficult.
And I would have loved to do a split screen multiplayer, but I feel this is already quite tedious on the visual presentation side, and I do not have any CPU power to burn on Switch. Right. So we're stuck on the single player for this one.
I think it's fine. I don't mind at all. I think personally I love single player games, so I mean maybe I'm your audience, so to speak, in that respect. But I think there's still a ton of room for single player games.
And that's nice to hear. Like, to me, most of the games I play are single player because I can pick it up when I want to play it. There's no obligation. What I find with multiplayer is it starts getting like anytime you're starting to deal with people, there's an extra level of interaction there. And I find that, like, I don't know, I'd rather play Unreal Tournament with bots where it's kind of consistent and at my schedule than either people who are too good or my friends, in which case now you have all the hassle of like trying to organize an event with people, or like it's inconsistent and weird. And I don't know, like I have nothing against multiplayer, and I know people who really love that, but for me it's just, you know what, this is, I want to pick up something and just play and not have to.
And you've got a child as well, at least one you mentioned. So, right. So that makes it a whole nother thing, right? Because you can't just pause the game, you know?
It's very true. Very true.
I don't have
the portability of the Switch.
Yeah, no, I love the portability of the Switch too.
Like back when we could actually take the kid places, that was awesome. Like I'd take him to like an indoor play park, and then he's happy for a couple of hours. And I found that, hey, the Switch actually works great for this, which is lovely. So I found I was doing more gaming portable than I had been like on PC or console, just because of the nature of that. So that's always fun. Actually, Jen, what sort of gaming do you like? Throw you back in here.
I am back. I'm next Andrew here. Well, I enjoy Curse Space, but as I'm not.
You're not allowed to say that. You can't plug it like that.
I started gaming on the classic NES system after my mom entered me into a contest through of all places Gavin's Bread, and we won an NES. It was a big thing in the neighborhood. All the kids came over because no one else had one, and no one else had really had an Atari apparently. So I played Atari. I remember playing the original Pac-Man because my babysitter had that. And then I played NES, and I remember Duck Hunt, Mario, Super Mario Brothers 3, DuckTales. I love DuckTales. I remember that one. That was just a lot of fun. And then I went into from there. We had a Sega. Sonic was fun. I didn't have as many games, and then it was the N64, and that Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. I love that one.
Oh, yeah.
And I just loved like the exploring and the story and the element of what the ocarina and the music played. Recently, I've played like. There were some challenging moments. My friend and I would go skating and play Ringette, and then go over and she'd watch me play. It would be like the movie. So, starring Jen playing as Link. And yeah, and I've enjoyed Transistor. I enjoyed Bastion, Supergiant Games, Hollow Knight, Child of Light. I like especially story. Like you can go and explore and take a look. There's a whole bunch of games I'd like to play. I played The Last of Us. We on the I think PlayStation 3 or 4, and that was great too. I really like for myself story. And just elements of just exploring and seeing how far you can push it in the world.
Very cool. That's an awesome list, by the way. Really cool games.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, there's so many other games I'd love to just sit down and play too. I find that there's gaming and I read graphic novels and books, and there's so much fun things to do in so little time and sometimes money. But
it's true.
It all comes down to time. Oh, I'd love to play all these different projects and see these things, but yeah. Hopefully you can see where like my action-y background and Jen's story background starts to click for Curve Space, but also good sense of what we hope to the direction we hope to take for Only by Midnight. So this is the 2/3 points of the mid boss, and at this point, this is where things are now incomplete. I've got slightly more complete on the development side. So you're now going to see a half-finished level, but I'd love to see your reaction going through this. So pardon the lower grade art for this.
It's no problem at all. I appreciate it. Since I already played the demo, it's nice to play something different.
It's also great for me to watch people play the things under construction. So we've tried to give silly human names to all of our big monsters, and in honor of certain people, especially vocal about masks these days.
Trending.
This monstrosity here is affectionately named Karen, and she has very spiky heels. The joke is she tried to complain to the manager, but we sent the laser drones after her. So there we go.
Interesting. I like the level design as far as the design idea behind the moving sphere kind of thing, with the borders like limiting you. I think that's a great idea. I'm not quite sure. I guess I'm shooting at the legs. Is that what I'm doing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that happens when you do that. I just had to test that. Sorry. Had to see what happens when you get shot.
I have to add that feature because of this level where you could get. Normally the rifts sort of kick you out, but that raises some interesting questions. I like sort of the feel of your navigating backward shooting stuff that happens kind of during the regular game. So we wanted this, like we had the small boss, the sort of human scale boss. Then we want to have like a really big one and want it to feel stressful and imposing. And part of that is like the lack of sight lines with these sort of canyons. Like it's stressful. We wanted to really kind of lean into that sort of boss feel. But this isn't the last boss. This is sort of the penultimate boss, the kind of big exciting one. But then we go from here to the more story driven sort of act piece. So this is the place where we're actively finishing off in a hurry as we ramp up to kind of the final version for Chip.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, this has been a pretty long interview, and I'm probably gonna have to cut quite a bit of this to make it listenable for the podcast. But this, as far as the stream goes, I think this is a lot of fun. I haven't been watching the stream though. I don't even know if anyone's chatting. Has anyone been chatting in stream or no?
Techie Crow heckled you a little bit about your game, but he seems to like it, so this is good. And otherwise, there's no chat, but it's been fun watching you play. So yeah,
it's been great. I'm watching it. I'm like, oh yeah, and I've been I always like watching people play because there's always notes and stuff too. It brings me back to when I was working at OnSpec, my convention days, where people watch and then people come to your. I don't know. It just reminds me of that fondly.
For sure. And Techie's cool. He's actually sometimes the co-host on the show, and he's a good friend of mine. So I'm glad to see that he at least popped in. He was busy and couldn't join us for the interview today, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, no worries, and we'll certainly be checking out more of the podcast.
And we have a couple different modes too in the game. Like your Andrew was mentioning, survival, arena, and a daily run is what we have planned too. So if you try Steriden, they have and that's a great game too. They have a daily run every day that's I think just generated, and you can see where you rate each day on the leaderboards.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So so there's a couple of those sort of trying to repurpose the same content in a slightly different way.
Sure.
And so there's kind of the main story one. There's the daily run, which is basically the story with some of the dialogue parts stripped out but kind of randomized. There's the I think this is going to yeah that's right. I did speak directly, break the fourth wall there.
Hey, it's a demo, right? Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, Andrew has It's true.
Gotta get that last power up in there.
But a good thing. So one thing that'd be kind of interesting just to see you do a quick test of.
Yeah.
I have more of these unlocked to get on my version, but the Steam one's a little bit behind. But if you go, I think Arena should be open on the main menu.
Mm-hmm.
Nice job of the leaderboard, by the way.
Oh, I didn't even realize it.
And so if you just go to Sniper.
All right.
Couple of graphic design elements still missing. So this is sort of the final completion. But so you'll see that this is very much the same game, the same enemies, the same weapons. But how do we make some interesting challenges out of it? And so what would an accuracy kind of focused challenge be? And that's basically what this one is. Somewhat inspired by the little interstitial challenges in Doom.
Which Doom in particular?
Doom 2016. I still haven't played Eternal. That's my ship curve space treat.
Oh,
so every time you kill one, you get a little bit more time.
You'll love it. It's a great game. I've only spent a few hours in it.
I had so much fun with 2016. It felt the way Doom should totally feel. So trying to create some of these interesting little challenge sort of pieces. We have sort of the survival endless mode, which is just waves and waves and waves, but the difficulty keeps ramping up. That's been really fun to see at some of the more high level of play where you're everything needs to be perfect, otherwise you're going to die, and that's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah.
The daily run, which is sort of a story but sort of scrambled, and that's kind of the places we're trying to get that auxiliary content, all derived from the same systems, the same technology.
Right on. Yeah, man.
And
I've learned so much today.
Oh, it's fun to talk about this stuff. And the other one that we didn't include at all, just because we've been talking instead of listening, but there's a awesome soundtrack in the background here, and that's all done. We connected with a record label, Fixed, and their kind of sub-label, Fixed Neon. They have been awesome. So yeah, I've got some stories on that side, but suffice to say, I was listening to a bunch of retro synthwavey music,
sure. And
it started coloring the game. The game started growing neon on everything, and it's I wonder if we can actually license this. And I connected with them, and they have been amazing. They understand what games need. So a lot of trying to license music is a nightmare for indies, because it's oh, well, you can have music for a year in North America. Oh, but you want to use it in a trailer? Oh no, we can't do that. And what about Europe? That's a different region. And oh, you also need to secure the master rights, and the agent, oh, he has something here, and you got to get this guy. And we had this one song we tried to license, and it started in Los Angeles. They wanted a pile of money. Then I needed to get the master rights, so I negotiated with the artist. He wanted a pile of money, but at least he was pretty chill. Then we needed to get the performance rights from this other company, but then that needed to go through the master company, and then that went through London, and then that went through, and at each step they wanted to add another zero. And so like licensing music can be a nightmare, where fixed is just kind of like, cool, you want music in the game for as long as the game exists. Yes. Global. Yes. And you're not looking for exclusive. Of course not. Cool. We can do that.
Yeah.
And it's just like awesome. And they have so much music. Like we had so much fun picking 20 songs. I could have easily picked out 5 hours worth of music from their library, and breaks the budget a little bit at that point. But they have been amazing. So if you're ever looking for, or your listeners are ever looking for synthwave retro music, check out Fixed Neon, FIXT. They are awesome. And on the because it's the same people, just the regular Fixed label, some really cool industrial metal-y sort of stuff. Just they're amazing. So highly recommend them for games, because like it's a record label that understands games and makes their music available for indies. Like you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, no, I'm actually a synthwave producer and retrowave producer myself. But yeah, I'm actually pulling up the website here, and this looks really cool.
Awesome. The guy with the red mohawk there, that's Clayton, aka Scandroid, aka Cell Dweller, and he's one of the founders of the record label. Yes, we've got a bunch of Scandroid tracks.
I saw that.
We have a bunch of
3/4.
3/4 has been awesome.
Fury Weekend,
like they've so many great artists.
Yeah, I'm familiar with most of these because that's my jam. Those the new retrowave stuff. So very cool. I didn't know about this label, so that's interesting.
I'm pretty sure it was New Retrowave, or if not them, like Prime Thanatos or something like that. I just had in the background while
an Astral Throb.
Astral Throb, and like that's. Yeah, it started coloring the game, and at the point where we had a wrench with like literal Tron lines on it, like glowing lines, it's like, okay, we need to lean into this.
Yeah, no, I think that fits perfectly. Honestly, for right now, I feel like it kind of fits like almost any sci-fi stuff these days. But in particular, the twin stick and like arcadey type stuff, I think that works really well with that type of music. For sure, absolutely.
Really, really cool. So this is probably already on the long side, but this has been a lot of fun to talk to you about this. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, I'm getting close to ending it here for sure. I want to thank you so much for all of your amazing insight and answering all of my questions and providing me with an extended version of the demo to play. And I mean, I'm sorry that the chat wasn't more filled. It would have been nice, but it's difficult to get that stuff to work all the time live. But people will check out the show for sure, either on YouTube or on, podcast, whatever, the podcast world.
No worries at all. It was a joy watching you play. Thankfully, there weren't too many catastrophic bugs, which is nice. That's refreshing change. Mm-hmm. And like we're always happy to talk game design. I love this industry, and so. Even outside of the podcast, feel free to hit me up on Discord. I'm happy to.
I'll send a link, actually.
Yeah, well, we could send a link. There should be a link to the Discord right on our Steam, or if you just go curvespacegame.com.
Curvespace Game, okay. I was looking for your website.
Yeah, we're not much for the SEO stuff, but curvespacegame.com should work.
There it is.
Yeah. Yay. Yay! Hey, the fact that the Steam one pops up, cool. Yeah. We're doing something on the SEO side, but yeah.
And it's just the Discord is just below the trailer there. It's join the Energy Corps.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's our permanent Discord link.
All right.
So yeah, feel free to hit me up. Always happy to talk Unity optimization, various things, and we've got some like really senior people here. So like. We had a great discussion last night. Just a fellow was asking for feedback on his 3D spaceship model. So we've got some awesome potential on that. And yeah, I'd love to talk game design.
Very cool. Well, yeah, I'll definitely hit you up in your Discord, and anyone who's listening, come and join us. Add to the conversation. Very cool.
Yeah, check out the demo. Would love to hear what you think. For at least a couple of weeks, it's still possible to make some changes. And certainly wish list. Check it out. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Andrew and Jen. You're both awesome, and I would love to have you back to talk about how well release went, and as well as your new project that you're not really ready to talk about yet. I'm very interested in the future.
Well, thank you so much. And that one is we cannot wait to talk about that one. Hopefully, with some good news. And yeah, I'm hoping Curve Space is a good launch story. We're still figuring out all this marketing side, but we're working on it as hard as we can. And we thank you for giving us a chance to promote this a little bit and also just talk games. So appreciate the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Rick, for having us. This was great, and I enjoyed watching you. And I'm like, oh yeah, how about this? Taking some notes here. Andrew.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
it definitely helps to have more people. I feel like at least two people. I feel like is good. I mean, I can do interviews with one person, but it's nice to have more people involved. And it's awesome that you're helping in the project, and you've got the marketing skills to really push this. And this, I think you guys are a great team. Thanks for being in this together.
Well, we try. It's been fun, and I am so excited if we can get Curve Space launching and get that funding for the Tragic Kingdom. Oh, we've got some cool stuff. Our goal, we're not trying to be that next BioWare. We're not trying to be that $100 million Silicon exit tech venture. Like I've lived that life with Serious Labs. We want to be that classic indie studio of that, like 4 to 8 people on the same wavelength, making cool stuff. Making enough money to just no stress make cool stuff. That's what we're trying to turn Only by Midnight into. And if we can pull that off, that's going to be fun. So.
Well, I have faith in you, and I wish you luck. I do think you'll do well, and we'll definitely see what the future holds.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate all the time and everything, the playthrough. We'll be in touch. I look forward to checking out more of your podcast and various stuff through Twitter. This is awesome to connect.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day.
You too. Cheers.
Goodbye.
All right. Thank you again, everyone, for listening and being supportive of Indie Game Dev Report. I hope that you jump into the Curve Space Discord and check out the game on Steam or Xbox today. And thank you Only by Midnight for taking the time to fill us in on some of your secrets and for offering advice on how to pitch to Nintendo. I'm sure I speak for the community when I say that we're super grateful that you both decided to join us as indies. Take care, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.